Hello and welcome to the second or part 2 of lesson 3. We are going to do animating using parenting. All right, so what we do is we take along and we select compass. And then in the parenting section, we hit the down drop arrow and we choose a road trip. So that means the compass location and its properties will be related to road trip. And when you make something a child of another layer, it says as a child layer, the compass layer inherits the scale keyframes of its parent layer. Not only is this a quick way to animate the compass, but it also ensures that the compass scales at the same rate by the same amount as the text layer. That's the first thing. The next thing I did is I grabbed my scrubber and I moved it all the way down to 929 so I can clearly see the compass. Now, if I move it down to 929, you'll see how the compass is probably right around here. What you do is you go ahead and come up here to your selector, you grab it, and then you move the compass over the eye. You'll note that the compass is above the road trip, so that way, layer speaking, the compass will be above the road trip itself, so on top of it, so you won't be able to see the dot. And then because the compass is a child of road trip, as I zoom out, you'll notice that the compass creates over the eye itself and evaporates in as we go forward. Excellent. The next thing I want to do is I want to check the project section over here, and then I want to choose a file and I want to choose import. I'm going to import file. And then when I'm choosing the type, I want to choose composition, right? So I'm choosing, here's my credits, right? And I'm bringing this in as import as composition, retain layer size. So composition, retain layer size from the import as menu, then click import. Then I'm going to go ahead and click import. Once again, I chose credits. I have import as, I chose composition, retain layer size, and I choose import. And from here, editable layer styles, click OK. So editable layer styles, click OK. And it's going to bring the credits in as its own individual composition to be added. All right, since we have different compositions involved, we have there 2 different compositions here, I want to go ahead and grab my credits composition and I want to move it to the top of the layer stack. As soon as I move it to the top of the layer stack, you'll note that credits here comes in as a composition. I want to choose credits right here. And then I want to make sure to shift click on both of these so they are actually selected. And then what I want to do is I want to layer, create, convert to editable text. Layer, and then I want to choose create and then convert to editable text. For me, it's just convert to editable text. For you, it would have to be create then convert to editable text, but convert to editable text. Now what happens is I can actually modify those values. Okay, so the first thing I did is I went down where it says your name here, right? And I highlighted up here, or I can just double click and allow me to change it, whatever. And I put my name right here. Additionally, I chose Lucidia Calligraphy. You can choose a different value. I suppose it's supposed to match what you did in the other. If you can remember, if it's slightly different, I'm perfectly fine with that. Then what I did is I moved over to the animated documentary. You'll notice there's an extra K in there, or a K at all, so I took out the K and I put in documentary. In addition, when I double clicked on this and highlighted it, I wanted to change the color. When I wanted to change the color, I just come right along in here and I click on my fill color. And the color they chose is 66 red, green is 82, and blue is 42. So once again, I change it to Zara Sebastian, then animated documentary, and then I change the colors appropriately. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and move my scrubber down to the 5-second mark, but I want to make sure that the animated documentary is chosen. My 5-second mark, animated documentary is chosen. Then I want to choose Control Alt Shift O. Control Alt Shift O on your keyboard, and what that does is that brings you back to your bridge. Control Alt Shift O. If it doesn't work, just Control Alt Shift O. If it doesn't work, like mine's not working, just open up your bridge. It's not really that big a deal. Then you want to navigate to the presets text animate in folder. So there's a presets text animate in folder. Select the fade up characters. So I want to scroll down right here and I want to choose my fade up characters. I then want to double click on fade up, and what that does is that applies that particular effect to the documentary. You'll note that it's not there right now. And then it should, there we are, it's now fading in, right? We fade in, fade out, fade in, fade out. And we'll probably mess it a little bit from there. All right, now what we're going to do is after we put in my name, or rather your name right there, we are going to apply a tracking preset. What I want to go to is a roughly 710, which is, I would say right about there. Then what I want to do after selecting my name, and then what I want to do in the effects and presets, I want to choose the increase tracking item. Then what I want to do is I want to double click the preset to apply it to the Your Name Here layer. So I'm going to double click this preset. That's going to apply it to the Your Name Here layer. After you successfully apply that, you'll notice from 710 to approximately 910, it makes it get bigger, right? So that is our increase tracking preset that we have added. Under the Your Name Here layer, I push UU. That's going to reveal the properties that have been that were modified. I want to go to 710, and under Animator 1, there's Animator 1. I want to change the tracking amount to -5. So I go in here and I choose a -5, right? So there's -5, and so that the letters are more squeezed together, I guess, right? So now what happens is we go like this, and they're more squeezed, right? So there we go. Okay, excellent. Now what we do is we make sure the Your Name Here layer is selected. I want to go to about 710. Then I want to click. I then want to click. I want to read T to reveal the opacity. So there's T, opacity is revealed. Then I want to, at 710, I want to click the stopwatch icon here, and then I want to make sure the opacity is set to 0%, which indeed it is. Then what I want to do is I want to go to 720. So I move this down to about 720, which is about 10 over, like that. And I want to set the opacity at this level to 100%. Right? So what it is, it's going to fade out and then fade in. Right? So those are our two options there. The other thing what I want to do is the number of animations are getting kind of squished. So under Your Name Here, I want you to open up Animator 1, and on the line that says tracking, right? Tracking out, what you want to do is you want to go to the second item here, and then you want to grab it and you want to move it to where it gets more towards 8 seconds and less towards 9. And what you're doing is you're changing the distance with which it actually gets larger on the screen, right? And you're making it happen quicker where that's concerned. Okay, the next thing we're going to do is go ahead and select the title sequence, and we want to go to 929, which is roughly right here. And at this point, so all the other text has appeared, and we can position the directed by accurately, which should be, oh, you'll notice that my text is rather large. I might have to go in and modify that at some point in time. I want to choose my text, and then I want to choose roughly right. I want to choose the directed by option, which you might just play a little bit, which is right there. And I'm going to choose directed by. Oh, not my, directed by. Okay, so, okay, due to the fact that my name wasn't being right at all on the title sequence, I went back to the credit sequence and I went back to the tracking out, right? So the animator tracking out. And then what I did was, I don't really even need this one. I'm going to delete this one. Can I just delete it? Boop. Okay, perfect. What I did is I went in here, which is tracking 0, and then the final one. So now if I go here, it only tracks out to 10. So go to your second keyframe point and change it to 10 or something along those lines so it doesn't disperse out as widely. I don't know where I made the error, but I definitely made an error somewhere. But now it only disperses out to 10, so it's like if I go back to the title sequence, it's I can actually see my name. I don't know what I did on that one. So that at least lets you translate it or put it in the field so directed by actually appears above your name and is much more manageable. Once again, I went back to the credit sequence. I went under your name here, under the tracking out, and I simply chose that second keyframe position and I chose it to 10. I think it was at 30 before. I don't know why. I think that was default. If you change it to something small, that it only expands out to show out to 10, and that's much more manageable. So anyway, so here's my title sequence. Now we'll get back to my directed by. Now I can take my directed by and I can put it roughly right over my name. Okay, and it's 20 point bold white and it says Times New Roman. If you want it a little bit bigger, you can always do 24. Right. So there we go. Okay, so let's continue from here. All right, so what I do is in a directed by selected, I push P to bring up the position. And what that's going to do is we want to click the stopwatch icon at that point in time to put a position marker right here. Then I want to go to position 7, right? And that should be the point in time where I don't have my name on the screen or your name on the screen. Then I want to grab the directed by layer off the left edge of the composition window. So I have my directed by, I hold my shift key, and I'm grabbing this and I'm moving it off. Make sure I had that. There we go. And my directed by is selected, and I want to grab it and I want to move it off this way while holding my shift key so it's a straight line moving off the screen. And all that does is ensure that the directed by moves in to right here. So all those things kind of work together as everything kind of slides in. Then what I do in the main composition is I do File, Import, and I'm going to where my car is, and I want to choose Composition, Retain, Layer Sizes, and Import. Right, so now I have another import of the car. I want to move the car layer on the scrubber to right before the directed by begins moving. I want to open up the position on the car by pushing P, so I make sure my car composition is chosen, then push P for the position that chose. Then I want to grab my car and move it off to the left-hand side of my composition, where it is directly over the directed by, and you'll notice the car composition is the very top of our animation. While it's at the 7-second mark, or mine's a 7-second mark, right before the directed by begins to move, I want to push the stopwatch on the position to create the initial keyframe. Then I want to move it down to where it ends, which is roughly at 9:29. Now at the 9:29, I want to grab the car, hit my shift key, and then drag it all the way across so it exits the right-hand side of the composition. I went to about 7:29 and I moved the car roughly right in front of the directed by so it's not overlapping, right? So they come up and then the car exits all the way to the right of the animation itself. Now we're going to add a motion blur. So I just want to go through and I want to add the motion blur, which this is the motion blur. And I don't want to add it to credits, but I do want to add it to all the other items with the exception of the background movie and the credits. So now what I do is I go to the credits section and I turn on the motion blur for the credits items. Then I want to go back to the title sequence panel and I want to enable motion blur. I want to choose enable motion blur up here so now I can actually see the motion blur as we run through. And if I look at this, I now see the motion blur for items as they're moving through my